Hello everyone, welcome back again to another sewing tutorial on this channel. If you're stopping here for the first time, this is Jowins Fashion Ville. You're absolutely welcome to the channel. In today's video, we'll be learning how to make an inbuilt corset. This is one dress that we find on the internet, and I'll be sharing with you guys my journey throughout the sewing process. If this is what you're interested in learning, please kindly hit on the subscribe button, hit on the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. So guys, let's get started. So guys, I'm back again like I never left. So we'll just go straight to the point. As you can see on the pattern paper, I have my basic block with the overbust and the underbust contouring. So we'll just go straight to drafting the style illustration for this dress. So I'll go ahead and draft the neckline I want. Okay, so it's going to be having a yoke. Okay, so I'll be using my pattern master to just draft a straight line, draft a curve I meant to say. I'll be curving it down by 6.75 to linking it to the bust point. So for the bust point, I went in by 0.25. You can go in by 0.5 if you want a 1-inch opening, but I just want a very, you can also do a sharp V. Okay, so you can also choose to link this, create your curve using the lower part of your armhole, or you can just place it here. So it depends on how modest you want your dress, your corset. If you want it to revealing, if you want it to be covered, you can go ahead and place your neckline based on your choice. Okay, so choices differ, so it's best to ask your client how revealing she wants the corset, the overbust corset. Okay, so I'll go ahead and place my body measurement on the pattern. So right here I'm placing my bust and the waist, and as well as the hip, the full length, which is the bust, the waist, and then the hip area. You know that the corset tends towards the hip. Okay, so I'll place my waist measurement, place the dart intake, and then the seam allowance. So I did the same for the hip and the bust as well. So for the bust, I simply placed the quarter of my bust measurement and then the seam allowance. So I'm linking the points together. Okay, so for you to get to this point, like I always mention, that you must have a clear knowledge on how to draft a basic block, which is the basic. Okay, so the next thing I'll simply do here is to draft the corset cup. So I'm just taking it round by 3.5 inches, which is the radius of my under bust. I'm sure if you're into pattern drafting, you understand the point I'm making. So the radius of my under bust, which is from the bust to the bust point to the under bust, is 3.5. So I'm just marking 3.5 inches round to get the precise measurement of my cup. So this is what I have here. And then the over bust contouring is 0.5 on both sides. So I'm going to blend it to avoid what we call gaping. So I'm opening my waist dart, or the hip dart. I will just open it to the bust point to enable me close the over bust. Okay, so I'm closing this part to enable me blend the cup properly. If you don't do this, you realize that one cup is bigger than the other. Okay, so I'll just blend it so that by the time I'm joining the two panels together, it should be uniform, it will be equal. I won't have one part of the cup longer than the other part of the cup. So this is what I have. So I'll go ahead and place the contouring properly, okay, so that the joining will be easy for me and very simple. So I'll go ahead and label it 1 2 3 4 5. So it's not difficult. The yoke is 4, the cup panels 1 and 2, and then I have the other panels below, which is 3, though the part of the 3 I'll be joining it, so that's why I didn't really label it 3A or 3B. So I'll be closing the lower parts. So after cutting, I'll go ahead and show you guys what I simply did, or what I did to join the lower parts together. So right here I'm cutting the piece. I'm cutting the piece on the pattern. I'll cut it out and then we'll get to see what we have after now. So guys, assembling this piece, this is what we have. Okay, so I'll just place it properly for us to see. So the part I'll be labeling as 3, I'll be closing this part up with my masking tape, or you can use a gum. So I wouldn't want to cut it out separately. So you can choose to cut it out separately if you want. So this is the back, basic block for the back pattern. So what I simply did here was to come down by 2 inches or 2.5 inches, and then I'll link it up to the chest line. Please kindly ignore the shoulder seam and the bust half bust span line. I won't be making use of it because I won't be having any need for a dart here. But if you want to place a dart, it's okay. So I'll go ahead and take my body measurement just like I did for the front pattern. So I wouldn't want to be too so elaborate on the pattern, so that we can just get straight into the tutorial. So for the back snatching, there's no zip allowance. We'll be using a corset, a modesty panel. I'll go in by 2 inches. I'll mark it on the waistline and then link it up. So at this point, you can choose to create the type of back curve that you want, either as a straight line or as a triangular line. So this is the part where you just draft to what you want. So I'll be using a straight line here for my back snatching. Okay, you can choose to make it triangular, you can choose to just play around with the pattern. So this is the pattern for the back. So I'll go ahead and cut out, use the pattern to cut out my fabric. So this is for the bust panel. For the wording, there's no seam allowance. Please take note that I didn't add any seam allowance for the wording. It's a thick wording. And then for the fabric, my main fabric, the lace, the interface for the lace and the lining, I added seam allowance round it, which is what, half an inch round it, to enable me to join the panels together. Okay, so I'll let you know why for the wording there's no seam allowance. As we go on, I'll let you know. So for the back panel, I'll be using my satin, doll face satin, as the main fabric and the lining, and I added my seam allowance round. For the main fabric, I'll be using a crepe. I'll just went ahead to notch that point so that when you're placing your cup, to be easy for you to do. The crepe organza to layer the crepe, and then the lining as well. So there's nothing difficult or much about this. Okay, so I have my crepe, the organza and the lining, and then this is the yoke. I used an illusion net, a skin net as it's regularly called, or an illusion net, and then I added a seam allowance around it. For some people, they will choose not to add a seam allowance on your illusion net, so that it doesn't get too big, to just relax properly. So it all depends on you. So I opened it up, I cut it too. I'll go ahead and um close the seam allowance for the neckline, just the neckline. I won't tamper with the other parts. And then for the back, the area I want to join, you can see my pins on it. Okay, the part without pins, I won't be joining it, okay, because I'll be attaching a sleeve. So guys, on the crepe fabric, which is acting as the front pattern, fabric for the front pattern, you can see that I've placed my lines on it, and this is more like a determining factor on how you want to create your boning channel. So I'll be using a bias as my boning channel. You can choose to create your own bias using your own fabric. Well, I'm kind of very comfortable using a bias, for already made bias for my boning channel. So I'm kind of very strategic on how I place my bias to enable me place my boning very easily. Okay, so you can see that I opened it up and then I stitched it few distance away from the line. I'll go ahead and flip it over and then top stitch it. Okay, so I try to be very careful at this point so that the space of the opening will be enough to accommodate my boning channel. So for this corset dress, I used a plastic bone, but I was simply advised that a regling bone should be used for a style illustration like this, most especially when if there's need for you to attach a lower skirt to it. But if it's just a simple corset top, you can use a plastic bone for it. But for a corset dress, which includes the top and then attaching a lower part, I will advise that you use a regling bone because it is sewable. So I had to kind of find my way around this. So as we proceed, I will show you what I did. So this is the cup. I'm done placing the boning. I didn't want to come and start showing you guys how I placed all the boning so that we don't take so much time. So I'll just go ahead and show you guys how I joined my cup, the wording without seam. Okay, so have in mind that you place your wording, please, right sides facing each other. Okay, I'm laying emphasis on this, right sides facing each other, and then I used an overlock stitch on this cup. I used an overlock stitch on it. An overlock stitch just locks it up without any seam. Okay, but for the main fabric, you can see that I've placed the interface on the lace fabric. I top stitched it, so I'll place them right sides facing each other, and then I will sew on the seam allowance. Okay guys, so for the main fabric is I'll be using a regular stitch, but for the wording I used an overlock stitch because there's no seam allowance on the wording, but there's a seam allowance on the main fabric, which we'll be using to we'll use rather to cover the cup. Okay, so I'll be joining this, and then I'll go ahead and join the other one as well. So what I'll simply do next is to notch the seam, just like I did for the other part of the corset cup, so that it can relax properly. Okay, so this is what we have. I'll just go ahead and layer this main fabric on the wording. Okay, so you can see that the corset wording itself is sitting pretty on the main fabric. I'll just secure it with a pin to enable me do whatever I want to do. So you can see my seam allowance well highlighted on the main fabric. The wording has no seam, so this will help me attach this corset cup easily to the corset dress. Okay, so I'm trying to trim out excesses intruding into the space of the seam. Okay, so ensure that the lines are matching, the lines on the wording is matching the line on the main fabric. So I'll go ahead and top stitch it easily using the seam line, okay. So guys, for the yoke, you can see I've gone ahead to stitch up the seam line for the front pattern and the seam line for the back pattern. Just like I mentioned earlier, I layered it so it's like two-piece with two-piece, and then I'll be turning it up. Okay, so for the front pattern, you can see the organza well layered on the crepe. After placing my bias, I layered it with the organza, and then I'll be using the seam allowance on the corset cup to attach it to the front pattern. Okay, so remember that I notched that point, so it's more like a guide for me. I'll go ahead and stitch it up. Ensure that you use your pins to stitch up this cup so that it flushes in properly, and then one part will be longer than the other. Okay, so this is the lining as well. I first of all use the pin to secure it before taking it to the sewing machine. This is the other part. I secured it with a pin, and then I'll take it to my sewing machine, and then I'll stitch it up. So guys, this is what we have after stitching. I'm here to give it a good press. You can see how it is sitting properly on the front pattern of the lining, and then the one of the main fabric, you can see that is also sitting pretty on the main fabric as well. So I simply placed my yoke using a pin. I just used a pin to stitch it round first. Okay, so this more like a guide for me as well. It's better you use a pin first before stitching, because this is a very sensitive fabric. You don't just have to make mistakes so that you don't stitch and unstitch. So I will take it to my sewing machine house, and then I will stitch it by 0.25, no half an inch. This is the back pattern as well. I stabilized the main fabric with an interfacing, and then I'll go ahead and place the yoke as well, just like I did for the front pattern, and then I'll stitch it by 0.25. okay, so I've done that. I've stitched it by 0.25, and then this is the lining I will use in turning this dress up, turning the back pattern. I also have a lining for the front pattern, we all know, so I'll secure it with a pin and then stitch it by half an inch. Remember that when I was attaching the yoke, I stitched it by 0.25, but this time around I'll be stitching it by half an inch on all the parts to turn it up. So I'll be turning it up through the hemline, through the hem, okay, which is the lower part of the corset blouse. Okay, so this is what we have. So I'll place it right sides facing each other, not this way, please. Ensure that when you're joining your shoulder, you place it right side facing each other, and then you close up the sides by the seam allowance. I was trying to make this tutorial very short because most of the times I realize that when I make long tutorials, people just don't just watch. So I'm trying to summarize this and then still give us what we need to know. So this is the modesty panel. The modesty panel is a stable fabric. I used the doll face satin for it. So it's about 22 inches in length on a spread, and on the fold we'll be having around 11 inches, I guess 11 inches. So I'm trying to close up the opening. Excuse me, guys. So I'm using my pin to place it to join it, to close up the opening, and then I'll leave one part that will help me turn this up. So this is what we have after folding it. So that part that I use in opening, turning it up, I'll turn it in and top stitch it. Okay, so please ensure that you use a matching thread. So what I'll simply do next is to place the modesty panel on the one part of the back panel. So I went in by 2.5. I went inwards by 2.5, and then I'll go ahead and secure it with a pin. First and foremost, what you need to do is to make sure you mark your 2.5 inches line first. Just mark it down so that you know your modesty panel is straight. So I'll place it there and I'll stitch it up by half an inch. Okay, so I also use this modesty panel to create my boning channel for the back. So I'll stitch it up by half an inch. So at this point I was trying to make sure that it's below my waistline. So I'll flip it up. I've placed my modesty panel and I'll use that line there to create boning channels, like 1 or 2 boning channels, and still leave space for my eyelet opening. Okay, I hope you understand, and I'll be in the comment section if you don't. So I also replicated that same line on the other side. Okay, so when you're doing it, sewing a dress like this, there should be uniformity. I did the same, I replicated the same thing on the other side, and this is what we have. Okay, so guys, the next thing for me to do is to create my eyelet opening, and then in fact I'm just so sorry. So let me apologize first because I was supposed to do a tutorial on how I placed the eyelet, but I actually ordered this and I got a total different package altogether. This is not an eyelet plier. I was supposed to get an eyelet plier, but I wasn't able to get. So I got something like this. I think this is for buttons or something. The plier is different and the stuffs I'm saying inside is also different. So I had to do it in the market. And then what I simply did next was to place my boning, the plastic boning, to fuse it into the boning channel and reduce it so that I'll still have seam allowance on it, okay, to close up the hem. So I've gone ahead to straighten up the bone. Use your steam iron to straighten up your bone, and this is me cutting out my bias strip to close up the hemline. You can do a top stitch or you can use a bias to just conceal that hemline and you get what you want. So on my working table, this is what I have, and this is the eyelet opening, looking so pretty. I think I'm so in love with this. The woman actually did a very neat job for me and I was super grateful. So right here, I'm just trying to check the measurements of the corset blouse. This is my first fitting actually. It's very important that you do a fitting first before drafting your basque waistline. I'll be dropping a tutorial for this net, for the skirts itself. It's actually a mermaid skirt. After this tutorial, I think the next tutorial should be for the mermaid skirt. I was actually trying to decide if I want a basque or a straight line, and then I went for a straight line. I just felt that the straight line was just looking so good on me, and then I went for it. But I'll be showing you guys, in case you want to create a basque waistline, I will show you guys how to go about it. So this is me just creating a straight line where I will attach my skirt, the lower part of the dress. Okay, and then if you want to create a basque, this is the midpoint. From the midpoint you come down by 5 or 6 inches and then you draw a straight line. It's not a difficult thing. There are several ways you can go around this. You can decide to also create different styles, either a curve there or make it this way. This is the point where you create whatever you want and then follow the lines and then attach your skirt depending on the diagram that you created on your corset blouse or your corset top. So since I created a straight line, I will be placing my skirt using that same straight line that I created. So what I'll simply do here, as you can see, I'll go ahead and notch the midpoint of my skirt. So after notching it, that midpoint there, I'll go ahead and then place it on also the midpoint of the corset blouse. Most of the times people do this, create this basque or whatever style you want to create on the body of your client, but because it's just me, so I have to be showing you guys. So this is the midpoint of the skirt. I'll place it there and I grip it with my pin. I'll continue to do this round. I'll continue to secure it with a pin. Just keep stitching, placing your pin with the seam allowance. The seam allowance on the skirt is 1 inch, so I'll just keep securing it until I go around. Okay, so this is how you're going to stitch it. See the way I placed my skirt, and this is exactly the way I will stitch it. I'll stitch it to one end and then I'll stitch it to the other end. Okay, so after gripping it with my pin, I'll take it to my sewing machine. Please, the importance of pin at this point cannot be overemphasized. You can't just stitch it without securing it. The finishing may not just be what you want, and this is a very sensitive fabric where you don't just have to be loosening seam and joining seam. You have to be very sure of what you're doing, especially the measurement of your skirt. Make sure that the skirt is actually fitting on your client before doing this, because nothing like stitching and removing and adjusting is not fitting on my client. So you have to ensure that you do your first fitting before joining. So I've actually joined it to the corset blouse, as you can see. So I'll be using a bias tape. Either first and foremost, I'll go ahead and use a weaving machine to weave the edge. Okay, after weaving the edges of the seam on the skirt, as you can see, I'll use my hemming gum to relax it. Okay, so you go ahead and place the hemming gum on this point where you attach the skirt to the blouse so that it just flushes. Okay, so I'll show you guys what I'll do. I'll place it here and then I'll place that seam on the hemming gum and then I'll give it a good press. Okay, so guys, this is the final look of our corset dress, and you can see the way it is looking so good, looking so pretty. And then yeah, you can go ahead and add up your sleeve, create a design that you want, embellish it to the design of your choice. You know, a lot of corset designs out there with different kind of embellishment. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Have a blessed day. God bless you.